Welcome to the TryPod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. I'm your friend Winnie here to run my eye over NRL round 11. Got some best bets in the chamber. We're coming in off perhaps the craziest regular season round I can recall in my whole life following NRL, and certainly 11 years doing this show. We had, let me just run through it. The favourites did not have a good time, but specifically the first 6 games of round 10. Parramatta, $1.70 favourite. They are up 12-6 in the second half, lose the game. The Knights, $1.45 head-to-head favourites, are up 20-0 and lose the game. The Broncos, $1.20 favourites, are up 14-0 and lose the game. The Raiders, $1.70 favourites, are up 20-0 and lose the game. The Warriors, $1.75 favourites, are up 14-0. It gets back to 14-all, and it's a field goal game, though New Zealand does win. The Panthers, $1.60 favourites, have a 30-18 point lead late. They don't win the game. Sunday was a little bit more normal, although these weren't normal scorelines. The Storm were $1.15. They got up 64-0. They did win, and thankfully they did, because we had a best bet there, minus 14.5, so we covered by 50-odd points. And then the Sharkies, that was the first team that wasn't a favourite to build a big lead. The Sharkies got up 14-0. Manly got all the way back to 14-all, so the comebacks continued. However, the Sharkies surged again, won well in the end. I covered why I think we got some of these dramatic swings, specific turning points in the games, magical moments of round 10 in my recap. I know a lot of you come here for hopefully some of the sharpest selections you could find punting on the NRL, and you've got my experience to tap into, as well as the sharpshooters that we've incorporated in the show. But I am sorry to say that it's been nothing but mediocrity for the last month. 4 straight weeks, I've had 4 best bets exactly per week, and I've gone 2-2 every single week. So last week, Dragons plus 2.5. We actually got the cover, though they lost by a field goal, and I mentioned the Storm was a winner. But I had Raiders minus 1.5. Geez, looked good at 20-0. Didn't look so good when they were outscored 32-0 in the second half. And Penrith minus 3.5. Another game where I had the favourite. The line closed longer than what we got on Tuesday. And Penrith led by 12, 2 different points in that game, but didn't win either. It ended up 30-all. I was thinking extra time, maybe a moment of magic, and you get a 4-point win in extra time, and you could still cover the 3.5. But actually, Penrith was lucky to survive. A couple of questions about Clarkey. So basically, because we don't have a sponsor on board for the show, I can't afford to pay Clarkey. I basically can't afford to keep doing the show, but I am doing it to try and keep it alive and for the love and respect for the audience. If that can change, then I'd love to incorporate Clarkey, but it's not worth his time. The guy has that many commitments and has that many different irons in the fire as it is. So I'm just trying my best to keep the quality as high as possible and to keep this thing going consistently for you guys. But more importantly than anything else, I've got to just produce the results. And look, I do think it hasn't been that bad going 8-8 in the last month, because I do think there's been probably more results closer to winning than losing. I think we've had weeks closer to 3-1 than 1-3. We're also still 57% for the season. And the sharpshooters, they didn't have a great weekend. Last weekend, I think Undertaker went down because he was on Penrith with me. I don't believe Benny Williamson found a try scorer last week, but the Badonis is also a shining star in this show. 7-1 in his weekly tip, which has been awesome. So I've got 4 different cameo or sharpshooter tips to include in this show, and I think 3 of them are all on one game as well. But I don't want to make you wait any longer for my best bets this week, where I'm going to change it up. I don't have 3. I don't have 4 best bets. I got 3. So that means we can't go 2-2. I can assure you of that. All right. And the way I'm playing it, the first game of the round, which is not till Friday, and it is already on the screen, Knights Eels, is I'm going to take the Knights under 24.5. That's the Knights team total, and that's $1.87 on Sportsbet, because I think Parramatta's every chance in this game. The Knights attack really has struggled outside of that one showing against a very depleted Bunnies side at Magic Round. I think the Knights still are a predictable side to defend, and I've also seen the improvement defensively in Para. I think it's a tight contest. And Para can back their defense a little bit more now they've got Moses to kick them out of trouble. I also like unders on Saturday, and I'm going to play unders in potentially the game of the round, which is Storm Sharks. Now, that's at Shark Park. I'm playing under 47.5 at $1.90 on Sportsbet because I think the Storm are going to want to be imposing and win this game with their defense after winning last week very much with their attack. But Cronulla can handle the Storm. Cronulla will not get shredded the way Wests were. Cronulla will be bang up for this one. I think it goes either way. Storm are a slight favourite, but I really don't think many more than 20 points could win that game. So I think 47.5 is far too high for a total. And then on Sunday, I'm playing Brisbane minus 10.5 at $1.91 on 365 and Dabble. And it's all about the spot. The Brisbane's lost 4 of 5. Look, Ezra Mann coming back in. I know that that's going to be controversial. I'm not expecting him to set the world on fire, but it's not as if he's been injured either. So the guy should be fit as a fiddle. Got a game in Q Cup last week. That's going to help. That's going to help cover the loss of Hunt. Cobbo's done a great job filling in for Walsh and offering something different at fullback. The Broncos just have too much firepower. Very underrated loss for the Dragons is Toby Couchman. Dragons have fought hard but just fallen short the last couple of weeks. You're coming into Brisbane in the daytime, a Broncos side that has to win. And I just think that the Dragons can't contain Brisbane's middle forwards and won't be able to hang in this game. So I'll lay that high line with a Brisbane side that must win, and I think they do win well. I'll post a summary of my best bets in the comments when I get a moment. But let's dive in. Of course, the reason we don't have a NRL on Thursday night is because it's Women's State of Origin, and New South Wales were dominant at Suncorp for game 1. If I had like a high enough level of knowledge, I would absolutely include the women's game, either into the pod or separately. I just feel I don't have the time to necessarily follow as in-depth as I would like to give high confidence opinions and do it justice. Maybe one day would love to be able to incorporate that. So we'll jump to NRL round 11, which does kick off on Thursday night. Thursday night's Women's Origin. Friday night is NRL. And Newcastle host the Parramatta Eels. The Knights are a 2.5-point favourite. Adam O'Brien threatened to wield the axe after his team blew a 20-0 lead at home to the struggling Titans. However, there have been no major changes, as you can see with the Knights. Let me see how much I can sort of fit into. Yeah, you can basically see at least the starting 13s there on your screen. And the only change is really the fact that Leo Thompson got a head knock. He's out. So you bring Cant to the bench. Elliott's going to start at lock, and Frizzell will play front row. Parramatta, like Newcastle, lost by 4 points at home last week. They will be bolstered, as you can see, by the return of Zach Lomax making an Origin bid. I think if he gets that game in and plays well, he should probably reclaim his Blues jersey. So maybe he's pushing that return from a foot injury to try and get into the rep arena, but obviously wouldn't play if he wasn't going to do himself justice. I think this is going to be a really entertaining game here because I don't see too much between the rosters, and there's a great deal of desperation for both sides. I could only play Para. I know it's a lost season, but the fact that it is Ryle's first year in charge, and he's got a multi-year contract, and they can say, look, there was always going to be growing pains, and then they lost Moses for the first 2 months and didn't have the preseason. You can see as a building year and as a team that still wants to find out what level they can play. And I've seen a lot more life out of Para in recent weeks, either winning games or really being close and looking like they were every chance of beating Cronulla, and certainly could have easily beaten the Finns if not for some desperation defence last week as well. That Knights result, on the other hand, that was inexcusable. 20-0 lead at home to the Titans. And I know that could provide some anguish that could be used as a tool by the Knights to dig in here as well. Should mention it's Dane Gagai's 300th game, but that result against the Titans may also have been evidence of a rotting core and some deep-seated issues. And there is a lot of pressure on this Knights coach, and I don't know necessarily if he's going to keep getting the response from the players, or whether he is making the right decisions and whether this team is playing as well as it can. And plus, I mentioned Leo Thompson being out. I think he's the Knights' best forward, and that's a big loss in this one. So I was going to play the +2.5, but feeling as though Newcastle will still give a big effort, and they are quietly a really good defensive team. And in front of the home faithful, I've actually landed on a Newcastle Knights team total under, as I said at the top. So Knights under 24.5 because of the defensive improvement I've seen out of Parramatta as they get used to Riles' systems being implemented. And even when Paris sort of on the back foot, you have Moses in the halves now that can change field position, take a little bit of pressure off your defense. He didn't have that earlier in the season, and it wasn't a coincidence that the Eels were dominated in a lot of games. I don't expect either team to dominate this one. And in a tight match as well, that often lends itself to unders as well. But liking unders and a lean to Parramatta has put me on a Newcastle Knights team total under. Later on Friday, we have the Bulldogs, the scorching Bulldogs, hosting the Sydney Roosters. And the Dogs are an 8.5 point favourite. The Dogs have had their doubters. Let me know in the comments how you feel about Canterbury. Even as recently as last week, people were saying basically this Dog side just had a cakewalk draw. I'll put my hand up that I did bet against the Dogs last week, but that was more so thinking that Canberra were going to be too hard to beat at home. I do believe in the Bulldogs. Just wish, I was so happy when the Raiders were flogging the Canterbury because I was going, look, deep down, I feel the Dogs are a better side than Canberra. And this is going to work out perfectly. We'll get the best bet win here, and then we might actually get some value on the Dogs in the next couple of weeks to respond. But the response came in the second half, unfortunately. Boy, did they catch fire and torched my best bet. For the Doggies, you've got Jamin Salmon out with some stomach issues. But I want to also just remind you that Salmon's contributed a lot to the forward pack, but Preston, of course, is suspended, as is Tupanua and Curran. So you got three important edge forwards there. And Curran can play on edge, but has also contributed a lot in the middle. Whereas for the Roosters, Lindsay Collins returns, and the Roosters are fresh off a bye, so they didn't take part in the chaos of round 10. But just to revisit the Roosters' form, good win on Anzac Day over the Dragons, and then did deal my best bet defeat against the Dolphins at Magic Round as well. Now, one thing about the Doggies is the defense you cannot question. Apart from, the Raiders just firing on all cylinders for the first 40 last week, and also apart from that crazy first half against Brisbane a couple of weeks ago, generally you can say it's an elite defensive side, Canterbury, and has been going back to last year as well. That's been on display, right? But then we saw what the attack can do for Canterbury, and it comes around, all the recruits really. It's Matty Burton, who returned last week. Of course, Crichton, who's the form player in the universe, I think. But then Kikau on the left edge as well. Connor Tracy having an awesome year. Cherry, Kiraz in Origin calculations as well. So you saw what the attack could do clearly when the Dogs lit the Raiders alight in the second half last week. I won't play the Dogs here, though, because I do worry about a slight come down after such an emotional win last week, and just a big match that you've got to be sky high for in front of a sellout crowd at GIO. And the thing is, I really do feel, as you look at the starting forwards, but it goes to the bench as well, I really do feel like the Dogs' forward depth will be tested here and is getting a bit thin. And as I say, the Roosters are fresh, but also have a rep pack, like when you've got Collins now on the bench coming on as well. So I've got to lean to the Roosters. The reason I didn't play the Roosters, and I looked at +4.5 first half and +8.5 for the game, I do have concerns over whether Sandon Smith and Hugo Savala can generate enough points against, these Dogs of war. And the crowd will be raucous as well. So while the line does feel a little high, you also just got to respect that this Dog side are riding a wave. They're not an experienced contender who's thinking, let's pace ourselves, let's peak in September. The Dogs are a side that's just has not had a lot of success for a very long time. And they just want to come out and win every week. And they want to rip everyone's head off every week. As a couple of comments say, Roosters, sneaky elite backline, Teddy, ageless. And if I haven't brought it up yet, the Origin teams are going to get picked Sunday night too. So that was not a deciding factor in any of my bets, but I'm always looking at those fringe players to put up big games. Well, I did mention, Zach Lomax wanting to audition on on Friday night. So you could say the same about someone like Teddy, but, as the captain of the Roosters, he's always leading from the front in any case. I do give the Roosters like a sneaky chance of an upset here. Now, while I don't have a best bet on this game, we have 3 of the sharpshooter tips all weighing in on this one. So can't wait to hear what the boys have in store for us, because I haven't watched any of these, so I'll watch them with you.
G'day guys, Matty here. My best bet of the week is going to be the Roosters team total over 16.5. My bet was going to be just taking the Roosters with the 8.5 point start. I do like that side. I think the Roosters have the better forward pack with Curran and Preston out for the Bulldogs. I think the Roosters have the better bench by a little bit. And the Roosters do have quite a bit of strike out wide to do some damage and have been in great form over the last month. So I do like the Roosters side, but I think I prefer the team total over just because we have a bit of insurance. I mean, if the Roosters aren't scoring 17 points, they're not covering the 8.5 point start anyway. But there are situations where, the Dogs could win 30-18 and that's not a cover, but it does hit a team total over. So that's the way I'm going to go. Good luck, punters.
Maddie leaning to the Roosters as well and going Roosters overs. How about Nicole? He'll have a try scorer.
Hey everyone, it's Nicole from Wiki. Look, I've got Spencer Leniu to score a try anytime at $17 at Bet365 as my value pick of the week. Google Wiki Linktree. Our Discord's got over 5,000 people. Our website is the odds comparison tool for NRL and AFL for free. And my try scorer picks go out. I'm trying to do one a game this season. The reason I like Leniu, it's a couple of days before the Origin teams get announced. Leniu obviously was in the Origin squad last year, but the Roosters sitting outside the 8, and I reckon there's a little bit of chat around whether he should be picked or not. He's going to be fired up. He scores a try once every 12 games, but I reckon he can crash over this weekend. Good luck, punt responsibly.
If Leniu scores, the Undertaker will be happy with that too. And what about Padonis? Surely he's going to favour the Roosters in some way as well.
G'day guys, Padonis here. Hope you're all well and safe. Looking to build the momentum, continue our winning streak. And we're going to do that with another underdog, and that's going to be Sydney Roosters on Friday night at plus 8.5 at $1.90 on Better. Put simply, I think that this is a great opportunity for the Roosters to show that they are a top 8 calibre team. Robinson will have his men fired up, off a bye, refreshed. They get back Lindsay Collins and they can exert some dominance onto a Dogs forward pack who are still missing some key players. And Salmon got hurt on the weekend as well. I just think for the ladder leaders right now, it's a good time to play them. They had a tremendous comeback win against Canberra last Saturday, spent a lot of emotion and exerted a lot of energy in that performance. They might be a little bit flat here, sitting pretty on the ladder with Origin period coming up and a few buys up their sleeve. So let's play the Roosters as an underdog. I don't think the market's got it right and respecting them enough. If Canberra ended up going on with the win last week, you'd probably see a line here of 5.5. So to get over a converted try, I think it's value. 8.5 was the play. So good luck, gamble responsibly.
Don't disagree with the sentiments of any of the guys, and they're all Roosters-centric plays there, and you've got to particularly pay attention to the Padonis on fire, and he likes the Roosters. I nearly got there as well, and now I'm thinking I probably should have with multiple sort of sharpshooters seeing it in similar fashion. But there you go. Plus 8.5 for the Padonis with the Roosters. We move to Saturday. It's my Finns against the Wars at Suncorp. And the Warriors are a slight favourite, 1.5 point favourites. The Dolphins have no changes after a desperate win in Sydney on Thursday night. The vicious fish is back, as you can see, for New Zealand, who play away from home for the 3rd straight week. RTS is also a chance of returning. He's in the reserves. Ford is out, though, for the Warriors. This is a tough one because I've got conflicting factors here. As Ryan says, Finns versus Fish. I do think Saturday afternoon at Suncorp Stadium is going to suit the Dolphins' speed. However, I am greatly concerned about the disparity in the power game, the force that the Warriors middles can play with, that 1-2 punch of Fisher Harris and Mitch Barnett. I mean, how many gun middles do New South Wales have to choose from? Nicole was referring to Leniu. I think Leniu is on the outside looking in, although he does offer a lot of great impact ability for the Blues. And if they pick a lot of other middles who are capable of long middles, maybe you don't need an 80-minute middle sort of sitting on your bench. You can afford a guy that will come in and give you like one spell of 20 minutes of the best. But, Barnett, he's nearly just about got to be there too. So that's just going to be so hard for the Finns to contain when you consider Saifidi's probably been their best prop this year. He's out. Plath has been outstanding. He's out as well. And so I think it's and even though it is in Brisbane, that does help the Dolphins a little bit. We know that Kiwi fans get out and force. Plenty of Kiwis live locally in Brisbane. The Finns won last week on the back of an outstanding completion rate and great defense. And I really think, like, it was 95% last week. I think it'll have to be close to 90% again to win this one, or else I could definitely see the Dolphins being worn down, trying to stop what is a sledgehammer of a Warriors forward pack. So it's a fascinating game to me because it's speed versus power. And I can't definitively sort of tell you who I think's going to win. You know who I want to win. But that's why I haven't weighed in for a tip. What do you guys think? We've got Peter Volandis. You were 1 week early with the Warriors call. This could be the letdown. So I did speak about whether there could be a letdown for New Zealand last week. And, hey, perhaps I was early, but the Warriors failed to cover last week. We actually got the winning best bet there with Dragons. And, that game could have gone either way. Once again, the Warriors on the road are a slight favourite in Australia. The Warriors are not usually favourites in away games unless they're having a really good year, but that they are. And a little bit like the Dogs too. You just got to respect the side that's just playing with a lot of confidence. Even when they're down, they're not out. And also just finding a way to win games. Like I feel like the Warriors of old get run down by the Cowboys at Magic Round usually. Probably get run down by the Dragons after giving up a 14-0 lead and it gets to 14-all. St. George probably should have gone on with that, especially Warriors away from home. But there's something about this side that they've got that confidence to draw on and they've got game-breaking players. JK says Warriors going to roll the Dolphins off the gun forward pack. So that's definitely my greatest concern. Barney, shame their halves are in two sides running next to last and a bloke who led his team to 0 points. That's obviously referring to New South Wales, who probably will pick, I think, Moses and Cleary, despite the fact that those sides languish at the bottom of the ladder. I think there's certain players that are just so good that the team form is very much a secondary consideration. JK home game for the Warriors. Look, the Dolphins do get a lot of support. Kiwi Tomahawk, you could probably guess who he's backing, says they'll be too strong. Ryan, happy to pass this game. Gut says Finns win. As long as that's not a weak gut, then I hope you're right, Ryan. Mike Hill says Fidel, safe bet here. And Kiwi Tomahawk, Warriors did let people down last week, played poor, still won. But that's the thing. It's a mark of a really strong side when you can play not up to your best, but still get the win. And like the Warriors really did not do much at all in the second half against the Cowboys and got the win there. So that's definitely, I think, a positive trade at this point in the year. So I'm hopeful, but I understand that the Dolphins should be a small favourite at home, but it's a game that can go either way. I think it just comes down to holding the footy and who's going to complete at a higher rate, because I do think the opponent will get tired out, either the Warriors trying to contain the Dolphins' pace or the Dolphins trying to stand in front of that powerful Warrior pack. Let's move to later on Saturday. We're going up north to Queensland Country Bank Stadium. It's Cowboys, Seagulls. The Cowboys are a -2.5 point favourite. I like the move there that you can see from North Queensland, who moving Purdue, who starred in the 30-all draw with the Panthers. He is now going to play 6 in this one, and he was a half coming through the junior ranks. I said in the recap, and I've said this weeks ago too, it's becoming more trendy now, but I like Purdue as the 14 for the Maroons. And Toddy Payton was asked about that and really doesn't want the young fella to get picked, but it did kind of sound like a coach that just doesn't want too many of his players to play Origin, because the Cowboys, when they're going well, especially, always going to contribute a lot of players to the rep arena. I think the Cowboys didn't even go well last year and still had more Origin players than any other team. had like 6 or 7 players involved in Origin camp, right? So it did seem like when Peyton was asked, would Purgey be ready, I was reluctant to sort of give him a glowing endorsement. But the spark, the X factor, and the versatility there, there's a lot to like about this kid. As for Manly, they'll stick with the same 17 that ultimately got rolled at home by the Sharks. So my first instinct in this game, tell me what you thought, guys. Cowboys -2.5. To me, I thought that's a very light line. I mean, you've got a Cowboys team. Someone tell me, how many did the Cows win in a row before Magic Round? They won at least 4 in a row, if not 5 in a row going into Magic Round. And then, as I've said, because we just covered New Zealand, I mean, the Cowboys so easily could have won that game as well at Magic Round in round 9 and could have easily beaten Penrith, who, by the way, of course, Penrith's not having a good year, but Penrith was basically full strength last week. Penrith's had games without Edwards, without Cleary, without Toto, right? And we understand they've really struggled, but Penrith was closer to full strength last week, and the Cowboys went toe-to-toe with them. So I'm looking at this Cowboys team as being in really good form, despite the fact they haven't won the last 2 weeks. The Undertaker says Manly were -2.5 in the look ahead. So what am I missing here? Like, I think -2.5 is light for the Cowboys. I'm not a big one in looking at sort of the look ahead lines because I can't really get down on them. It doesn't do me any good sharing the best bet sort of once a week on a Tuesday. If you can take advantage and pick off, that's where you're going to get the most closing line values. Obviously, if you can pick off lines before there's a big swing or when there's big news or off the back of games or events that are unfolding, whether bookies let you do that consistently, I'm not sure. But I'm actually really shocked at that. I wonder, Undertaker, if you're still watching, can you tell me, like, why would Manly have been a favourite in Townsville a week ago? Did you play the +2.5 on the home team? Ryan says, I got them +2.5. So, I mean, that looks like a standout bet because to me, the Cowboys are the better team. So if you want to play the Cows, -3.5, $1.95 on Ladbrokes and Neds is available right now. That does look to be the play to me. What's going to keep me off it, as Undertaker says, no, I hate both teams. But obviously it's love-hate for the Undertaker, who's a passionate Seagulls fan. And you know what? Speaking of the Undertaker, we're going to be watching this game really closely because we've got a season head-to-head. And Undertaker gave me 3 teams to his 1 Manly. And the three I have are Dolphins, Para, and North Queensland. And I just need one of those 3 to finish higher on the ladder than Manly. And I did give the Undertaker plus odds. I think he got $2.50 odds on Manly to get ahead of those. And then none of those teams had a win in the first 3 weeks. And I feel like Undertaker was already pretty chuffed with himself. But, a game like this, if Manly gets the win, Manly may well still provide a victory there for the Undertaker. So, look, getting back to the reason I haven't played the Cowboys, though I do hope they win here, is does that 90 minutes against the Premiers take a bit out of the Cowboys? That was a grueling game. I think you do have to acknowledge that. And then, look, Manly got back Gerbo last week, played a very strong Cronulla side. Just because you lose, I'm not going to massively downgrade you. Turbo has been in and out of the team, but back for the last couple of weeks. He wants to put his hand up for Origin 2 as well. This team still can play at a very high level, Manly, when the Trbojevic brothers are there alongside DCE, of course, who, I'm sure it's no coincidence that the form has been inconsistent since the DCE saga too. For the record, I think if I could have DCE for 1 more year at $1 million a year, or you could give me Jamal Fogarty for the next 3 years at $700K a year, I actually think that's going to work out in Manly's favour, but it still probably has unsettled the team a little bit this year. And you know what else? We spoke about it for a week when Paseka did I think it was his Achilles or his knee and was out for the season. But like that is a really big loss that that Manly's going to feel all year long. So I was really hoping, I didn't have a play in Sharks Manly, but I was hoping that Manly, when they made that comeback, could win because obviously I think Cronulla is a lot better than Manly. So I would have loved to see sort of Manly win that and people be a little bit higher on the Seagulls and lower on Cronulla. But of course, Cronulla stormed home in that one. But the thing about this as well is that the Cowboys are not quite full strength. I think Manly's quickness helps contain the Cowboys. And I also think with Ruben Cotter remaining out, the Manly pack can absolutely keep the Seagulls in this. Why the Cowboys were an underdog a week ago, someone else is going to have to explain that to me. But as it stands right now with a line 2.5, 3.5, it's a lean to the Cowboys. I'm not going to play it. Question there, or a few comments coming through, which I really appreciate. Luke says, I have to agree with Undertaker. Cowboys are highly overrated. Well, I think getting these results without their captain, and as I say, could have easily beat Penrith, could have beat New Zealand, did win 4 or 5 straight before that. I'm not sure, but it depends how highly people rate them. But I think Cowboys, if you're telling me a week ago the Cowboys were a 2.5-point home underdog, then they're not highly overrated by the marketplace. But Luke says Manly have so many problems in the forwards despite getting Gerbo back. And that's, it does help getting that stability there. But I think that's where it does come down to, that Paseka has left a hole that they've yet to be able to fill. Mike says, can't see Cowboys beating a Manly side with something to prove. And there's something to that. Like I remember 2 or 3 weeks ago, Manly just really needed that win and went to another level and were really strong and got an impressive win over Penrith, something that the Cowboys were unable to do at home last week. So that's sort of what reasons why this could be a great game and why I've just left the -2.5 alone. But I do have a best bet on the next game. I just want to check, when's our next sharpshooter clip coming in? Oh, that's not till Sunday. All right, so this could be, it certainly is a ripping Saturday night. This could be the game of the round. There's always a bit of feeling in Sharks Storm at Shark Park. Melbourne are -3.5-point favourites. Ryan says feels like a volatile game. That's probably the previous one as well, because you get teams like Manly and North Queensland that can go on runs and score 3 or 4 tries in a row, but also can give them up too. But getting to Sharks Storm, we've got Hazelton out, though Talakai is back and Wilton is a chance in the reserves. And in the reserves, where you won't see on the screen, but take my word for it, Harry Grant is named there. Now, does Harry Grant need an Origin fitness test? I would say unlike someone like a Lomax that sort of needs to prove themselves, I do feel like with a hamstring, if there's a little bit of doubt around Grant, you don't have to play him this week. I think there's enough trust with Billy Slater and with the Queenslanders that Harry Grant, look, you're 90% this week. Don't push it just to try and get into Origin and risk aggravating it. We'll bring you into camp, we'll test it out, and you might be better off to stay on ice for another week. So I probably would lean towards, I don't think Grant needs to come in. I mean, Garlick's done just fine for Melbourne recently. Nelson returned for the Storm last week too, and that adds a lot more power. And, both these sides have physical forward packs. As for, speaking of the Storm, Pappenhausen most ever points or equal most ever points by an individual. Pappenhausen had more points himself last week than any other team that played in round 10. Benny says he snagged under 49.5 for the best on this game for a total bet. And I'm on at 47.5. So again, these early lines are some head scratchers there. I know obviously the Storm put on a lot of points last week, but I'm expecting a very different style game at Shark Park on Saturday night. The likes of Fanua Blake Kaufusi up against Stefano. You sort of thought Stefano would really claim a Blues jersey playing in such a successful team in Melbourne, but he'd be on the outside looking in as far as Blues forwards. Again, just goes to show the depth. King is a smoky as well. That's going to be blockbuster. Now, I mentioned Pappenhausen before. Sorry, I've sort of got sidetracked because I'm trying to read the comments coming in as well. Like the form that Pappenhausen's in, and Edwards has not gone gangbusters this year and is playing in a struggling side. And then Teddy actually has been awesome this year, but the Roosters have been hot and cold, and Teddy did get replaced last year. I want to know in the comments, guys, who it should be the Blues fullback. Are there people who feel that Pappenhausen is the best fullback potentially in the comp right now and on form should be picked? If you're asking me, I'm actually going to still side with Dylan Edwards. I feel he got into the arena, did not let his state down at whatsoever last year. He's playing in a team that's won 4 straight grand finals, played for Australia. And it's not all Edwards' fault that Penrith haven't won that many games this year. Edwards was out for a couple of them as well. And the fact that there's going to still be like 5 Penrith players in the Blues team. So I think the combination play there, like Cleary will be on the right side. Edwards will be sweeping behind him. Yo's in the mixed ball playing too. Liam Martin potentially on that edge. Like, I'm picking Edwards for what he offers, in terms of the power, the carries to start your sets too, the fitness. Although that's not an attribute that Pappenhausen's missing either. Obviously, he's a fitness freak too. But it's close. But for me, it's still Edwards. But I can't strongly disagree with you if you actually want to go back to Teddy or you want to pick Pappenhausen. And the fact that it is a new coach, obviously it was Madge last year, but it is Laurie this year. I feel like while there's going to be some loyalty shown to the players that have done it in the jersey before, Laurie also has the freedom to just pick who he thinks will do the best job. So let us know. Richard said Pappy has to be picked on form, but Paul says Edwards 100% if he's fit. Peter Volandis perhaps in form there. Right, speaking of form fullbacks, Kennedy is right up there in the Dally M votes. And I know that's a slightly different conversation, but Kennedy's actually been on fire for the last month for the Sharkies as well. I think the crowd plays a factor here. But in saying that, everyone understands Cronulla is such a good team and hard to beat at Shark Park. And I like that if you're playing Melbourne because you will not get ambushed. Melbourne has lost 2 of their last 4 and knows that they must bring the effort areas and be at their best or they will be beaten here. So I feel like you want to play Melbourne when they're dialed in, like last week, off a blown lead and off a couple of recent losses. And I still think Melbourne won't be reading their press clippings just because they won 64-0. I think Melbourne's going to understand this game starts again 0-0. It's a very different opposition. It's a very different environment to Amy Park, and it's going to be tough. And on that note, a week out from or the week of Origin selections, I think this game will actually have an Origin feel, definitely a final style battle for field position. And I think this is the game where they're both going to have to defend at a high level. So 47.5. Benny, congratulations, grabbing a 49.5 earlier, but 47.5 still feels too high to me. I'm going to predict the team that wins this game is going to score around 22 points, right? And I think it's going to be hotly contested as well. How do you guys see this one? James Graham says 64-0 is bad prep, but then again, you could see that as a training run and that Melbourne didn't expend too much energy. Dan says bellyache era when they hold a team to 0 under has a very good record in the next game. And that's what I like about Melbourne is that even if they are winning big, they've got that pride that they want to keep defending their line and they don't let the cheap points in. Some comments about Origin fullbacks. Colt says Daly has his favourites, e.g. Teddy. Panda, Teddy's unplayable at the moment. Hot bag grapes. Storm been pumping teams on dry tracks, but on heavy wet tracks, they've had losses like the Dragons lost, Raiders lost, close game to an understrength Rabbitohs. Really like that observation there. Undertaker, don't risk Grant. Queensland are getting humped regardless. Obviously, I'll weigh in on how I see Origin at the right time, guys. And Sunday night will be a fun recap because I'm sure we'll be getting like the whispers and the league teams, and we can speculate as well on the official teams and talk all about, you know that even if you've got a team in your mind going into this weekend, like there will be a twist or a turn. There will be a player that plays out of their skin. There'll be somebody who gets injured inevitably. There'll be a suspension as well. So nothing's obviously set in stone. And sometimes there's domino effects too, where it's a certain player's going to get picked. Heaven forbid, if a Stephen Crichton gets injured or something this weekend, then suddenly you're probably not picking Kiraz to play outside Crichton, where you may have been before. So, combinations. If one guy's not available, then another guy who might have been borderline might not get in too. So that just adds a whole extra layer of intrigue. Colt says Storm wingers must be fired up. Now, I didn't do the recap after the Storm game. I did it early with some other commitments on the weekend. But isn't that one of the craziest outcomes of the season that Melbourne scores 64 points but did not have a winger try? I mean, I feel bad for anyone that had a same gamer and you're putting in Farlongo or even more likely Xavier Coates, and you've nailed your handicap with 11 Melbourne tries, and you can't get one out of a winger. And I think you get multiple props crossing as well. So that's going to hurt. But that does just go to show sort of the variability with try scorers, that sometimes when a team wins too easily, the ball doesn't even find the winger because there's already a gap for the second row or the center to stroll over. So final note there, guys, I do have a play on this one because I'm not certain which way it goes. Absolutely, Melbourne's the best team in the league, and I haven't wavered for that all season. So I respect that they're in good form and should be a favourite. But I give the Sharks a chance. I think it'll be narrow, low scoring. And 47.5 does not even need to be that low scoring of a game. It could finish 24-23, or 24-22, something like that, and we could still hit our unders. Last note I'll give to Leicester. Cronulla have been very consistent, no blowouts, just close losses. Could easily be higher on the table. Agree with that point as well. You think about the game that Cronulla lost on the bell, basically, to Canberra. You could easily flip that result. And trying to think, it's escaping me now, but Cronulla have had one or two other really tight losses as well. Was there a golden point game where Nico failed? Or that seems to happen basically every year. You guys let me know in the comments. I'll keep it rolling into Sunday. Broncos Dragons, where we do have a best bet. We're playing Brisbane minus 10.5, which is the line everywhere. It's at Suncorp on Sunday afternoon. And what you're going to notice straight away is Ezra Mam is named for his first game in the NRL this season at 6. Walsh still out, so Cobbo is at fullback. Toby Couchman, a massive loss for the Dragons, and that is a big part of the reasoning behind why I'm on Brisbane, because I do think the Broncos will dominate this one up front. I still think Brisbane's a good team, though they've had their struggles. There's a long turnaround there off a bad loss. That just gives Brisbane more time to stew on that one. Brisbane has been scoreless in the last 2 second halves, and this is a team that Madge would have had as basically the fittest in the comp coming into the season and unable to finish off games. I know that Mam could be a little rusty, you can say, but as I mentioned previously, like, it's not as if he's coming off some injury and rushing back into the team. Like, the guy should be absolutely fighting fit and wanting to make an impact and sort of win over the crowd. And I think it's going to be a very mixed reception, if not a very negative reception. But it just comes back to me that Brisbane needs this one desperately. You've seen it too many times. Brisbane at home in the daytime, just hard for sides to keep pace with them. And the fact that the Dragons have had multiple games go down to the wire, like losing a Magic Round, and the whole game swings on that halftime 12-point play, essentially, with the sewer spilled ball, and you nearly came back and won, but you fell short. And then last week at home, down 14-0, but you fight back to 14-all. And why didn't the Dragons win? In part because of the deficiencies in the Dragons' halves. And how do you pull an upset on the road? You need your halves to really shine and to come up with big plays. And I don't trust that King Tongia or Flanagan can really do that. And they'll be outplayed. You'd expect they'd be outplayed by, the experience and class of a Reynolds and Mam. And I mentioned the forward sort of disparity as well, with Couchman unfortunately being out. So although it is a solid line at 10.5, I think Brisbane gets it done there. Do you guys agree with me? Paul said he's going to be there. Captain's Lounge. Enjoy, Paul. James Graham. Dragons will be devastated. Close loss at home. Yeah, it already has all the signs of this is not St. George's year. And that's after the Dragons were pretty good last year and blew the opportunity to make the finals. And then you thought they'd come back a bit better this year. And, the guys have had their moments like Gutho and Damien Cook, but yet this team's still just falling short. Undertaker, Mam should be in jail. Barney, wham, bam, thank you, Mam. Can't wait for his return. So talking about a mixed reception, there you go. You've got it all just within our chat. Now, it's a triple header on Sunday. So moving to the middle game, we go to Canberra for 4 p.m. Raiders, Titans. And Ryan says, I like alt margins on Broncos. And when you do get these high variance, I don't know why I lost my display there. Sorry, I'll try and bring that back up. When you do get these high variance games, it's definitely got me thinking. We should be. Oh, it's so annoying. I don't know why. It doesn't want to show. It does not want to show the team list anymore. No, we might have to go without. Sorry, guys, just dropped out. And the worst part of it is you've got to stare at my face for the rest of the show. But we are on to Raiders Titans. And I lost my sort of train of thought there as well. Just the comment. I like the comment there from Ryan, but he's referring to Brisbane. But basically, if you like a side, play them with some alt lines for increased payouts. So a good example would be, all right, we really like Melbourne. Look, it's not a low line. It's 14.5. But there's a lot of reasons why we think Melbourne is going to blow out West. So play Melbourne 30 plus, 40 plus, 50 plus, 60 plus, that type of thing. Because what we saw in round 10 was a lot of teams that had really strong momentum swings and big runs. And we saw a team, be up 20-0, but then lose 32-20. But what you will also see is a team win a half by 20 and then win the next half by 20 as well, because they can harness momentum again in the second half, and you're going to get that compounding fatigue as well. So what you're going to definitely see is extreme results where you're going to see, whether it's an underdog can win outright, or a favorite can win by even big margin, or an underdog can win 13 plus. I think you're going to see that more and more. And as a handicapper, I know I'm kind of doing going off on a tangent here, but I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, one of the strengths of the pod was like a game could be at plus 6.5, and we feel like that line should be 4.5. And so, you'd play that. Like, that's a key number. But in this day and age with the 6 agains and just like, I don't know, short dropouts and just so many different ways that you can vary up a result, those points are worth a little bit less than what they used to, because I feel like less games are landing like right around the number just because you're getting more extremes because of the ability for teams to score a lot of points in a row. And that's why I talked about on the weekend too. I'm staying out of this either team to score 3 unanswered. Like, used to be money to bet against certain teams in under spots, or when you were against the team to say they won't score 3 unanswered tries, because you'd often feel like, I'm not even sure if that team will score 3 tries, let alone unanswered. The game is different now. So I do think, in addition to best bets, the way that you can find an advantage is taking the alternate. And and the opposite is true as well. I would never want to go like, oh, let's make it safe and take an extra 10.5 points, and let's play this leg at $1.15 and this leg at $1.20, because I feel like you're just asking for trouble, that you're just getting more extreme results, and 1 or 2 of those is going to get rolled. And that's not to say that every bet you're going to play is going to win by 3 tries, and so you can get yourself like a $5 or $6 or $7 magnified payout. But I do think here and there you are going to hit those a little bit more often these days. So I appreciate the comment there from Ryan. Now we move to Raiders Titans. So you'll just have to take my word for it with the team list. Sorry, it's missing from the screen. Horsburgh is back for the Raiders, another player that will want a big game to earn another Origin jersey, and look forward to him clashing horns with Tino. Kieran Foran is on the interchange bench for the Titans for his first game for this season. So these were 2 teams involved in those rapid swings, 20-point comebacks in the Raiders and Titans game. But it was, in fact, the top 4 Raiders who were on the wrong side. They were overcome after leading 20-0 and looking unbeatable. And it was the Titans who came back from the dead, down 20-0 in Newcastle, and actually got that win. Now, to me, that produces a very obvious bounce back spot here for Canberra. And I could only lay the line, which is 9.5. But I do think that win will have done a lot of good for the Titans, because it gives them that confidence, some sort of reward. If we can actually fight, if we can be tough, we are a team that can generate points. It really just comes down to, if we, the Titans, can defend, we'll have a chance to win games. And that defense does not come naturally to the Titans. They've got to have the belief that, they've got a right to win games like this, and they've got to bite down on the mouthguard at times. And it's not saying they need to keep every team to nil, because I think the Titans just about every week have got 3 or 4 tries in them. But you've got to limit the bleeding when you're up against it. And absolutely that's going to be the case here. And I do recall a year ago, the Titans did display a lot of toughness and really deserved to win in Canberra. And that was the game where they were blown off the park by 6 agains, and it was something like 10 6 agains against the Titans, and still only lost the game in Golden Point there to the Raiders. Whether or not the Titans can repeat that, I guess just getting back to the fact that the Titans won, I'm not expecting the Gold Coast to be overconfident. They won't be complacent because the Titans will be well aware you come into Canberra and anywhere off your A game, you're going to get flogged here. Now, what's going for the Titans in their favour, I think despite the fact that like a David Fafita has been a non-factor essentially so far this year and is absent again this week, I do think the Titans pack have the cattle that can compete with Canberra here. So while I expect the Raiders should roll, and I know they'll be highly popular, and I'll bring up a lot of your comments in a moment, I do think, though Jason Campbell really was not too effective last week, I think another week back in the halves with Bremo, who had the winning try, it just gives the Titans a little bit more threat on offense, which also can increase the belief on the defensive side of the ball because you've got a bit more continuity and you've got playmakers back. And then add to that the calm head of Kieran Foran as well, who'll obviously be injected throughout the game and will bolster the playmaking. Barney, man dribble out of control, over punished. I think he's probably in the minority there. James Graham, Titans 2 road wins in a row is no chance. Colt Dragons lack punch, especially with Couchman out, Clemmers or Walker. Broncos forwards will own this game. Peter Volandis, are you going to play 3 unanswered tries in the future? So, I mean, you could play 3 unanswered tries, yes, but I've always felt like the bookies aren't giving you a great price on that. So that's why I was always enjoying finding the no at the correct spot. And I also think just my luck, if I like a team to score a lot of tries, and I went and played them to score 3 unanswered, I swear they'd probably score 2 and then have it answered, and then 2 and have it answered, and then 2 have it answered, and you'll end the game and they'll win 6 tries to 3, but they never scored 3 in a row. Just my luck, I reckon. So, yeah, it's just an example of the way the game has changed. As Colt says, he's going to play Broncos minus 20.5. Hot Bag Grape says Titans have 15 good minutes in them. And look, there's some truth to that as well. I think Newcastle will really pour. Like, it's interesting. Let's talk about these two teams again, Raiders and Titans. To me, the Raiders-Bulldogs game was the Raiders were amazing for 40, and then the Bulldogs were also even more amazing for 40. Whereas the Titans-Knights game, sorry to be cruel, but I feel like the Titans were awful for 30, but then the Knights were even more awful for the next 50. So the Titans will take a lot out of that win, but didn't impress me a great deal. Based Aussie says NRL impossible to bet on this year. So, and look, it has been a really tough year. So I feel like I should have done better than 21 and 16, but it's still, I'm glad at least that we're still in profit despite some curly results. Pando, Sharks just beat Para. Should have lost the game against Tigers. Refinance the house on Storm. I can understand that a lot of people will feel pretty confident about the Storm. Look how red hot they were. Jeremy Piper says, got to find the high variance team. Jeremy Kerwin says, Raiders too physical for a weak defensive Titans. That ultimately might sum it up right there. Jeez, so many comments coming in. Yeah, great for in-play betting, guys. I agree. Lachlan says, did I miss a sharpshooter? Saw all 3 on Roosters. The 4th sharpshooter play is actually on this game, Lachlan. So thanks for reminding me. We're going to have a try score from Benny Williamson.
G'day, TryPod fam. As always, thanks to the lads for having me on. Last week got a little bit too cute with Kalen Ponga. I wanted to tip Lucas, but I thought I'd take the safer route and get Ponga off his duck. Unfortunately, that continued, and that Knights second half was diabolical. Sitting at 3 and 5, a few wins over $2, so not too bad. Certainly not at Padonis level, but this week we're going to run with Hudson Young, who's been putting bread on the table for weeks. Great record against the Titans, scoring in his last 4, including a double in the last head-to-head. And left back roles have been eaten against the Titans, scoring in 4 of the last 5. He's $2.30 on Sportsbet, which is a little short, but I think is a great option this week. So I'm going to take him. Best of luck if you follow, lads. Let's get it.
So Benny has gone Huddy Young, another player you just think you wouldn't be able to leave out of Origin. Look, I've found a way to get the shared screen back so I can show you the team lists for Tigers Rabbitohs, which would be the final game we discussed. But I like that comment there from Hot Bag Grapes too. Raiders can do a job on the Titans back five. Not convinced the Titans can do a job on the Raiders backs. Fogarty's kicking game, the difference Raiders will cover. Yeah, if I had to play it, I would be laying the points as well. And there you go. Benny, who's had 3 winners so far out of 8 and is always picking plus odds, likes Hudson Young, who's been pretty hard to deny so far this season. Based Aussie, what have you noticed is different capping in 2025 compared to 7 years ago? Well, I think I've covered a few of those reasons. Look, there's so much that's different. I feel like I need a whole show to talk about how much it has changed. I mean, you can just look at so many markets that we used to bet that we don't make as best bets anymore, and because the bookies have cottoned on and you can't, play those anymore. I'll give you one example. If you're a long-time pod follower, basically the bookies found out that statistically 50% of games had a try in the first 8 minutes and 50% didn't. So they would give you $1.90 try in the first 8 minutes, yes or no. But it was a really lazy market. It was basically set at yes or no first 8 minutes every game. But what they weren't factoring in is, yes, it does happen 50% of the time, but it's much more likely to happen in a game with a high total, in good conditions, with good attacking teams. And it's much less likely to occur in games, that are the opposite, with a low total and good defenses and potentially nighttime, and especially a couple of those seasons where there were a lot of penalties. Remember before the 6 agains, there used to just be shots at goal. And if you got like a team that took the 2 in the first 8 minutes, you basically were home, because that was going to chew 2 minutes of clock and take away an attacking set right there, right? So we would just consistently look at games where the total was under 40 and bet no try first 8 minutes. And not to say it was a free win, but it was winning 65% of the time. But now the bookies either adjust that time, or they adjust the juice, or they don't offer it at all. And that's just an example of sort of like a market inefficiency that we uncovered. We profited off it for 2 or 3 seasons, but then it ultimately, gets ironed out and gets removed. That opportunity gets removed, and then you got to move on and find, new edges. And there's many. Honestly, I think that would be a good show for me to just talk about how we've actually sort of changed the marketplace as well. And unfortunately, some areas that we found a lot of value don't exist anymore, mate, and we played a part in the demise of some of those markets. Okay, let's move on. We've got one more game. Let's see if we can get in under 60 minutes tonight. West Tigers against the Rabbitohs, and it's a pick'em game at Campbelltown on Sunday night. And you've got one team that's off their worst loss of the season and worst loss in a number of years. I know that the Tigers at 70 I'd put on them maybe last year or the year before in Townsville, but 64-0, pretty grim. And then you had the Rabbitohs, just about one of their best wins in recent memory, coming from 14-0 down. When you consider who was out and beating Brisbane, that was outstanding. And on the back of Latrell, who's just been absolutely immense. You got Stafford Toa is back for the Tigers, as you can see, though Fanua Bole is out. Alex Johnston is in for Souths. For me, I could only play West. What about you guys? As bad as they looked, that's where I want to now play on a team off that low point that I know is going to be very focused throughout the week of training and might not enjoy training too much this week, but will really look to bounce back. And the thing is as well, Storm can do that to teams. Like we talked about the comebacks, and once teams are down, they throw caution to the wind. They play more risky. But in the Tigers case, that actually led to more drop balls, intercept tries, and it just made the game go from bad to worse. The Storm are capable of doing that to a number of teams, so that does not write the Tigers off for me, although statistically now we might be able to say the Tigers aren't going to win the comp. I think the Tigers are still a team that can push the fringe of the top 8. As for the Rabbitohs, you've got to remember, while they won last week, still no Cody Walker, still no Jack Whiten, but I do respect the fact that Bennett is certainly getting the best out of this group. They get a longer turnaround going into this one, and they are feeding off the confidence and form of Latrell, who I said weeks ago has got to be there for Origin, and others were questioning that, but I think now everyone would probably agree should be the Blues left centre. So it's definitely a lean to the Tigers. If I could have got a +1.5 at $1.90, I probably would have played it, but just couldn't quite get the line or price I wanted. So it's a reluctant pass. Do you guys agree? Are you taking West or Souths in this one? DJ Kaiser, Tigers bench rubbish. Based Aussie, West for sure. Colt, I like Tigers. James Graham, is Luai unhappy? You know, there's that extra bit of drama based on an Instagram post by Luai's father and the hypocrisy, the fact that Luai, you know, didn't think that there were team first actions taken by Lockie Galvin. And then the quote, if you didn't see it, was release clause activated by Luai, because the bizarre thing about Luai signing for big money and a long-term deal at West, and this being his first season, is somehow he has a get-out clause after 1 year. After November 1, potentially, if he wants to activate that. So, you know, is there going to be disharmony? We sort of saw West put up a couple of really great wins in a row on the back of the controversy that would appear to have steadied the ship, but then you go out and lose 64-0. Does that unsettle West? Or will West now respond the right way, as you often do see when a team has an embarrassing loss, is the week you want to play them? So, lean Tigers, should be a good game to finish out round 11. I don't quite have enough confidence, but like on paper, yeah, the Tigers are the stronger side here and probably should be a slight favourite for mine. Although JC says Rabbitohs by 12. That should wrap the show for tonight, guys. As always, let me know how you see it. Are there any other great bets out there that I'm missing? Or what do you think of the ones that I've put forward? As well as the sharpshooters as well. We've had 4 bonus tips built into the show. As I said, when I incorporated the sharpshooters, I think as punters, you know, more tips inside the show is great, but it can't be tips for the sake of tippings. It can't be disingenuous. I'm not going to start giving out a tip every game if I don't feel confident in it. So I need to incorporate other people who are really experienced, who see it a different way to me, and I can get their, you know, most convicted tips, and we can hear the way the boys see it as well. And we can get a different angle as well with, of course, guys like Nicole and sometimes Benny Williamson picking try scorers, which I know you guys love as well. And yeah, I wish I could contribute more with the pod too, like more try scorer content, potentially same gamers. I know people are crying out for that. I'm just pushed to my absolute limit in terms of how much content I can create and how much I can put into the pod. And I've got to stay true to sort of the core of hopefully what you guys want. I'm always open to feedback, but just trying to break down the games the way I see it, mostly from a line and you know, total if I see a particular style. And then I hope that whether you guys back the best bets, whether you just factor it into your own betting or whether you build it into your same gamers, I hope that you can take some value out of that. Let's see how we go. I hope you guys have a great week and enjoy round 11 footy action. And we'll chat about it all Sunday night, as well as talk Origin team lists. Lego.